November 4th, 2025. A UPS MD-11 cargo jet waits at the end of runway 17 at Louisville Muhammad Ali International Airport in Kentucky. The MD-11 is large and heavy, built with 2 engines on the wings and a 3rd engine in the tail. That tail engine lets it carry massive cargo across long distances, but it's also the reason for a rare type of failure that can turn deadly. Most modern jets use only 2 engines, and the systems are designed to handle a loss on either side. But the MD-11's layout is entirely different. 3 engines in 3 separate spots means the balance of the aircraft depends on everything working in sync. If one fails, it becomes hard to maintain balance. This aircraft also had the same risk. On this fateful day, it's scheduled to carry 200 tons of aluminum to Honolulu, Hawaii. While the pilots ran the routine checks before rolling, everything looked fine. But just 37 seconds after the call for takeoff thrust, a warning bell exploded inside the cockpit. And it keeps sounding for 25 seconds straight while the crew desperately tries to figure out what really went wrong and how to save the plane, until the plane crashes to the ground violently. And before crashing, the jet could only reach 175 feet. So basically, it could not even fly properly that day. Whatever went wrong with the aircraft happened so fast and with such force that even 3 experienced pilots had no chance. This is the story of UPS Airlines Flight 2976, the flight that probably was not ready for flying that day. Every aircraft carries its own past, and sometimes that past becomes important in unexpected ways. This MD-11 aircraft wasn't just another cargo jet. It had been in the sky for 34 years. Built in 1991, it began life with Thai Airways International as a passenger plane, moving people across Asia. Back in 2006, UPS Airlines bought it, removed the seats, and turned it into a cargo jet. And for almost 2 decades, it delivered packages across continents, surviving storms, turbulence, and everything nature threw at it. In the weeks before November 4th, this MD-11 aircraft had been parked inside a maintenance hangar in San Antonio for major repairs. The aircraft was opened up, inspected piece by piece, and then carefully put back together. Technicians followed job cards for every step. They checked parts, tightened bolts, measured torque, and recorded every detail. These records matter because when a plane goes down soon after heavy maintenance, investigators have to consider the possibility that something went wrong during that process. It may not find you the exact answer you are looking for, but it will give you the direction and clarity for the investigation. It's disclosed that the plane had been serviced not long before the flight. Everything looked fine on paper, but paperwork doesn't keep a jet in the air. It's physics that does the job. And on November 4th, the physics were just seconds away from turning against them. As the crew pushed the throttles forward and lifted off, they had no idea that their aircraft was already coming apart. At 5:13 in the afternoon, UPS Flight 2976 started its takeoff roll on runway 17 right. The engines roared, the speed climbed past 100 knots, then 150. The nose lifted and the airplane began to climb, but then within seconds there was fire in its left wing. The plane lifted off anyway, but its fate was sealed long before it left the ground. When the flight data was checked, it revealed the grim truth. The peak ground speed of the flight was 186 knots, which is enough to fly but not enough to overcome the chaos happening on the left side. With flames disrupting the airflow, the plane never had a chance to stabilize. As a result, seconds after takeoff, it banked sharply left, which was not a controlled turn but a sudden one. And then came a violent drop toward the ground. But the striking part was that when the fire broke out on the left wing in the first place, immediately the left engine did something no engine should ever do. It broke off. The entire engine and a big part of the pylon, which is the structure that holds it to the wing, simply ripped away from the aircraft. Metal pieces like fan blades, bolts, and pylon fragments flew in every direction across the runway. This clearly means the engine didn't fail later in the flight or high in the air. It happened right during takeoff, at the worst possible moment, when the crew had almost no altitude, no extra time, and no room for mistakes. But what went so wrong in the engine? The way it works is pretty simple. Inside any turbofan engine, everything moves so fast that even a small failure turns violent. The large fan at the front spins thousands of times each minute. And the disc holding those fan blades is under huge stress. So if even just one blade snaps somehow, or if the disc cracks, the entire engine loses balance in a split second. As a result, pieces of metal blast through the engine cover, which can cut fuel lines, hydraulic systems, and hit the wing too. Even worse, on an aircraft like the MD-11, this flying metal can also strike the other engines. And in this flight, exactly that's what has happened. That just means one thing. The break happened where the pylon connects to the wing, not somewhere inside the engine mount. Either something inside the engine blasted upward and broke the attachment, or the attachment itself failed first and the engine tore itself apart. In both cases, the result is the same, and that's how the left engine was gone. Flames were coming from the empty spot where it should be. But the real danger was not this one yet, but what happens next, because the trouble was moving straight toward the other engines. On paper, losing one engine on a 3-engine plane is survivable, but only if the other two work. There was a bright flash near the right engine at rotation, which matched a compressor stall. And when this happens, generally airflow breaks, the engine loses thrust, and it can even shut down. The investigation even revealed that the right engine wasn't giving full power at all. So let's get this straight. The left engine has blown apart and separated. The right engine too was damaged and underperforming. And that leaves us with only the tail engine, which was working normally. Now think about it. A fully loaded MD-11 aircraft on a long flight needs at least 2 engines producing full thrust to climb. Is one engine enough to do it? Absolutely not. So the crew was then flying with almost no thrust on one side. Major structural damage, an active fire, and not enough power to stay airborne, which basically depicts an entirely doomed situation in the air. As a result, the plane couldn't maintain altitude. It had no height to recover and no time to fix anything. So it went from climbing to sinking almost instantly. But that leads to an even tougher question. Was there any chance for them to stop the takeoff earlier, before everything went out of control? The quick answer is no. Flight 2976 failed right after V1. It's the point where a pilot must either stop or go for the takeoff. Before V1, a pilot can abort. But after V1, pilots have to take off, because if they try to stop, the plane would run off the runway, crashing into the guard wall. So the crew had to continue, but they were still too low and the damage was too severe to climb. They added takeoff power, lifted the nose, and for 35 seconds everything seemed normal. But then the warning started in the cockpit. By the time they might have understood the failure, they were already late. Aviation instructors also agree that when a major structural and engine failure strikes at that exact moment, even a fully trained crew cannot recover the aircraft. The crew in this flight had only 25 seconds remaining before the crash. The cockpit voice recorder held over 2 hours of audio, which contained normal pre-flight talk, light taxi chatter, standard call-outs. It all sounded routine. Only the final 25 seconds had a chaotic situation with the alarms, the warnings, the crew trying everything they could to keep the aircraft in the air. The aircraft finally crashed in an industrial area just past the runway. And the impact was devastating. Fires broke out immediately. The destruction didn't stop with the crash. People on the ground were caught in it too. Because when a fully fueled cargo jet crashes, the destruction spreads fast. On top of that, the MD-11 hit warehouses and parked vehicles, setting everything on fire. The cargo bay was full and the fuel tanks were also loaded for a Pacific flight. As a result, all of it turned into one massive blaze. Compressed gas cylinders in the wreckage exploded. Hazardous materials spilled across the area. First responders arrived at extreme heat, explosions, toxic smoke, and collapsing structures. They couldn't rush in, as they had to check for pressurized bottles, chemicals, and unstable debris first. The site stayed extremely dangerous for hours, and firefighters sometimes held back water until explosive hazards were cleared. No doubt the 3 crew members died on impact. But they weren't the only victims. People in nearby businesses were killed or badly injured. Some died from the crash, others from the fire. Local hospitals already treated dozens, but the impact spread far beyond the plane. When investigators reached the site, the flames were still rising. But if they waited, the evidence would fade, because in panic, people forget what they saw. Plus, heat and water change the shape of metal. Even footsteps can ruin the small clues that matter later. So the NTSB set up its team right away. They scanned the entire area with laser tools and recorded every piece of wreckage, every burn mark, every twisted panel, so nothing was left out. This mapping helps them rebuild the chain of events. They can see which parts fell off in the air, which parts separated on the way down, and which parts broke only when the plane hit the ground. The cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder were found early, as they are built to survive huge impacts and long fires, and they did. The information inside them would later become the spine of the entire timeline. Once the site was secure, the recorders collected, and the map was complete, the real work began. The investigation. In aviation disasters, metal always tells the truth. You just need the right people who know how to read it. The NTSB and FAA took the left engine, the pylon, and all the broken pieces to secure labs. Metallurgists started examining everything to figure out what really happened to them. When metal breaks slowly over time, it leaves clear signs. Fatigue cracks grow little by little, and under a microscope you can see tiny growth lines, where each line shows one cycle of stress, almost like the rings inside a tree. If a part has been weakening for months or years, these marks will show it. But on the contrary, a sudden break looks sharp, rough, and has no growth lines at all. It's the signature of an instant failure. Investigators also check for heat damage, like if any part melted, if the fire changed the color of the metal, or if the part was already failing before the fire even began. Plus, they also check the bolt holes to see if they stretched from too much force or signs that someone tightened a bolt incorrectly. And they compare every broken surface with an undamaged MD-11 part so they can separate crash damage from what failed first. This is how they figure out the real story hidden inside twisted metal. So the big question investigators are trying to answer is simple. What broke first? Did something inside the engine fail and tear the pylon apart? Or was it the pylon itself that failed first and damaged the engine? Or did both things start failing at the same time, feeding into each other and getting worse by the second? If the engine's fan disc broke, investigators will find where the crack began. They'll check that spot to see if it came from a factory flaw, metal fatigue, corrosion, or something hitting the engine. If they think the pylon failed first, they'll focus on the bolts, check them under electron microscopes, measure the broken surfaces, test the metal, and compare everything to the original design numbers. This process is slow and detailed, and that's why it takes months. And until the truth comes out, aviation authorities can't take chances. Because if there's a flaw in one MD-11, others might have the same problem. But the FAA didn't wait around for the full investigation. they went straight to an emergency order that every MD-11 in the sky had to be checked right away. Boeing, which now supports the old McDonnell Douglas jets, has instructed the airlines to pause MD-11 flights until experts understand what went wrong. So, UPS grounded all of its fleet, and for a thorough checkup, inspectors went straight to the places most likely to repeat the failure, like the parts that connect the engines to the wings, the mounts that hold everything together, and the fan discs deep inside the engines. If they found cracks, bad fittings, or even small signs of stress, that plane stayed on the ground until it was fixed. And in such cases, history shadows this investigation. That's why the first thing the experts did was to compare Flight 2976 to two past disasters. For example, the case of American Airlines Flight 191 in 1979, where the left engine and pylon broke off during takeoff in a similar way. The plane rolled and crashed violently, killing all 271 people on board. The reason that was revealed in the investigation was a damaged pylon from improper maintenance. If we see the case of United Airlines Flight 232 in 1989, its tail engine's fan disc shattered and debris cut all three hydraulic systems. The crew used only engine power to steer and then crash-landed in Sioux City. The result was devastating there too, as 184 survived while 112 died. Those events changed rules, inspections, and containment designs. However, Flight 2976 shows that catastrophic failures can still happen, even in 2025. But why? The NTSB is considering three possible chains of failure here. First, something inside the left engine broke on its own. A fan disc or blade may have snapped, which sent metal fragments through the engine, cutting fuel lines, starting a fire, and forcing the pylon to fail until the engine tore off. Some of those fragments might have also damaged the right engine or hydraulic lines. Second, the problem may have started with the airplane's structure itself. A bolt or pylon attachment could have weakened over time or been maintained incorrectly. If it finally gave way, the engine could have come loose, damaged fuel lines, triggered a fire, and scattered debris as it separated. The third possibility combines both. A small fault, maybe a crack, a small fragment, or a leak, started the chain. And that weakened the pylon or fuel lines, which then led to a fire and engine separation. In this case, internal damage and structural failure fed into each other, all starting from one early defect or maintenance error. But the complete investigation still has a long way to go. If the NTSB finds a manufacturing flaw in the fan discs, all MD-11 fan discs will be checked or replaced. If it's a maintenance mistake, rules and training will change. If it's a design issue, the aircraft will get new parts, new shields, and new inspection schedules. The FAA's emergency order is only the start. The final recommendations will be strict, evidence-based, and impossible for airlines or manufacturers to ignore. One thing is for sure. Whatever comes out of Flight 2976 will reshape cargo operations, tri-jet safety, and possibly every large turbofan engine in service. The basic report may come in a month with more details on the timeline, alarms, pilot actions, and engine data, but it won't name the cause. The final report can take a year or more. So think about this. If a single hidden crack can destroy a three-engine giant, how many risks around us stay invisible until it's too late? And if a disaster like this happened over your city, would anyone even have time to react? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below, and if you want more in-depth investigations like this, tap like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments which crash or mystery you want next. Your choice might become the next story.